Okay, so here's step 4 of the chocolate mold project. Now that we have this little basketball, whatever that says, some student probably designed that. And then we also have the block, the 2" by 2" by 2" block. What we're going to do is we're going to put the basketball inside the block. We're going to put a spout down to it where we can pour the chocolate into it. We're going to turn the basketball into a cavity, so it's no longer a basketball, it's a cavity in the shape of a basketball. And we're going to split it up into quarters so that we could then potentially save the 4 STL files for 3D printing to make the thing. So let's go ahead and do that. So if you notice on my basketball, we've already got the 3 planes that we're going to need. We're going to need those for centering it inside the block and getting it perfectly right in the middle. So we're going to go ahead and open up a new assembly. So standard IAM. IAM stands for Inventor Assembly. And we're going to use place. And we'll bring in, of course I have to go find it all. We'll bring in the basketball. As soon as I find it. Oh, there's the block. And we'll bring in the block. And we'll bring in the basketball. All right, now that they're both in there, I'm going to go to constraint. And we're going to just use mate for these first several constraints. I'm going to say this work plane should be mated to this front work plane right here. And then we need to offset it. And because the cube is 2 by 2 by 2, we're going to do an offset of 1. And it's either going to be a positive or a negative. And you'll see that case it came away from the cube, but I wanted it to go into the cube. So I'm going to turn it to a negative, and I'll hit apply. And then I'll go ahead and do the next plane. I'll choose this one to that face. And I'm going to put an offset of 1. And again, it went away, so we'll make it a negative, and that put it down. Now, it'd be easy to look at it right now and just be like, oh, it's perfect already, but it's not. Because if I move the cube, you can see that that ball doesn't actually stay in the middle. So I'm going to intentionally bring it out, and I'm going to do one more constraint. This one gets a little trickier, though, because you have to now tell that plane. You can't just choose the face. For some reason, it doesn't work. It used to, but in the last several versions of Inventor, it doesn't. So instead of choosing the plane, you're going to choose the outside edge. And then you can put in your offset of 1. And this time, it did go the right way, so I can just leave it as a positive 1. And I'm going to hit apply. Okay, now eventually that's going to be a cavity in there that we want to get chocolate into. So we need to put a spout on this, an injection site. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to put a sketch on this top surface, and I'm going to put a point on there. Okay, now I do want it to eventually be right in the middle, but just to show you that I am dimensioning the thing, I'm going to intentionally put it where it's not in the middle. And I'm going to choose dimension, and I'll choose the point. And I want to dimension it from the side, but if you notice it's not letting me select the lines on the side, it's because they're not active yet. So I actually need to go to project geometry. And I'm going to activate that top edge and one of the sides. And now I can go back to dimension and dimension from the point to the top. And we'll make that 1 inch. And from the side to the point, and we'll make that 1 inch. And now it's perfectly in the middle. Now that we have that point, I'm going to go to 3D model, and I'm going to choose what's called hole. This is the hole feature that allows me to make a hole. Now I'm going to look at it so that I'm looking right at where the hole is. What we really want to create here is what would be like a funnel. So let me explain what these options are in here. The first option is for threads. If we actually want threads so it could screw or have a bolt that attaches to it, but I don't. I'm going to pour chocolate into it. I don't need threads. So I'm going to leave that on what's called simple hole. Now, how do we want it to start? Do we want any kind of a countersink or a counter bore top? Yes, we do. Now, just so you know, this is what a bolt head could sit into. This is what a screw head could sit into, but it also functions like a funnel. So we're going to use countersink, and we're going to have it start nice and big. So I'm going to go to the countersink opening, and maybe I'm going to start it as 1 inch. And you'll see I have a nice big opening, so I'm pouring the chocolate in. It's going to be easy to get into that funnel. But the problem is the funnel is going to leave an imperfection on my basketball. And to give you an example of how this works, anytime you have an object like this gum container that was plastic injection molded, you'll be able to feel seams on it, which it does have seams on the sides, and usually an injection site on the bottom. Okay? They put it on the bottom because it doesn't look as good, because there's imperfections. Now, if we did this, we would have imperfections on a lot of our basketballs. So what we need to do is change this taper angle to something much steeper, like maybe 110 degrees, or maybe even 115 degrees. All right, so we got an angle of 115 in there, and that's starting to look pretty good. It's still hitting the basketball a little bit, so I'm going to just go a little bit higher, maybe 120. And if you wanted to go 125 or something, you can see you have less imperfection on there, you could. The diameter of that hole, chocolate's pretty viscous, so you're going to want to probably use a 1/4 inch hole or so the chocolate actually goes down into it. Now, sometimes it'll default to where the hole is going through the entire object. You don't want that. You want to put distance, and 1 inch is fine. That'll get us into the cavity. Remember, there's not actually anything there. It's going to be a hollow in the shape of a basketball. So that's what you want. And we'll hit OK. Now we have this spout that is a funnel that feeds down into it. Okay, we're going to put one more hole on this, and it's as an air release. So if I put a sketch, I'm going to put a hole right there. This way, when we're injecting the chocolate in there, or in the real world, when you're injecting plastic into it, you're going to be able to let the air release as you're putting the chocolate in one hole. So we're going to want to make sure that's centered there, but then it's going to be offset from the side by maybe a 1/2 inch or so. So we've got a point right there, and we will go to hole, and then let's look right at it. This time we don't need the funnel because nothing's going in. It's just an air release, so we're going to keep it as a simple hole. It goes in 1 inch, will be fine. It does not need to be a 1/4 inch in diameter. Let's just add a 1 right there. That'll be 1/8 of an inch in diameter. And that way, when the chocolate's coming in one hole, the air can escape out this other hole. So we're not pressurizing the inside of that cube. All right, so now we have a block that looks like this. At this point, you're going to want to save this because we're going to bring it into a part file as a derived component. And I'm going to save it as chocolate basketball in block. It is an assembly, but the next thing we're going to use is going to be a part file. So you're going to want to make sure that gets saved. All right. And then we're going to open a brand new part file. And we're going to use what's called, we're going to use manage and derive component. So you click on that. You're going to get the option to find that assembly, which is right here, and I'm going to open that. Okay, and then once we have the assembly open, what we're going to do is we need to keep the block as a solid, but we're going to turn the basketball into a negative. Now what you're going to notice up here, there are 3 options for the derive style, and it defaults to this last one. And in that last option, you can't use negative. So you'll have to switch it to either the first or the second. Either one is fine. And that gives us the option to use this subtract feature. Okay? And we're going to want to go select not the block, but the actual basketball. And we're going to click the negative, and it's going to turn into a negative. And that's going to, instead of being a positive in there, there will now be a cavity in the shape of what we want. So we'll hit OK, and it always goes opaque at that point where we can't see it anymore. So we're going to go up to default. And we're going to change it back to something clear. I usually use clear blue or clear green. Either one's fine. So you'll now see that there is a cavity in the shape of a basketball on the inside. So we're almost ready to 3D print this thing, but if we were to 3D print right now and fill it with chocolate, you'd never get the chocolate out. We need to split this into quarters, because then we'll have 4 different quarters that we'll 3D print put together for our actual mold. Okay? So we've got the work planes that are already in there. So let's go choose the 3D model option on the top, and we're going to come over here to split. When we choose split, our tool that we're going to use to split, I'm going to go ahead and choose this work plane right here. And then instead of select faces, we want this little green option, and that's going to allow us to move 1/2 or remove 1/2 of the other. So I'll choose this guy right here. And I'm going to say OK. So we now have that back half of the mold. And I'm going to go select split again, and I'm going to choose the other plane that goes right through the middle. And I'll choose one or the other, it doesn't matter. I usually start with this left one, and then I'll do the right one. And I'll hit OK. At this point, you want to save this piece as an STL file So if I were to go to File, Save As, go to the arrow, Save Copy As, I could save this piece as an STL file, and maybe you call it the back right quarter or something like that, back right. And once you've saved that, then you're going to go back to your split, and we'll say Edit Feature, and switch it, and save this as the front right. Then go to the first split, Edit, Switch, and save this as the front left. And then one more time, go down to the second split, switch it, and this will be the back left. And you will have now saved all 4 quarters as STL files, and you could 3D print them. You'll put them together, put a rubber band around them, melt the chocolate, pour it inside, let it cool off in the refrigerator or freezer, and then you'll be able to remove your pieces and have your finished product of chocolate in the shape of what you originally designed as a basketball.